Speaker is Fahad Shah. Fahad, find your biography. Is a journalist and writer. He's the founder and editor of the Kashmir Wala. His latest book is Of Occupation and Resistance, an anthology that focuses on resistance and politics in Kashmir. So I'll turn it to Fahad.
Thank you all for coming here. I don't have any paper because I don't write for these things. I just speak my mind out because I'm a storyteller, so I just tell stories. I have to speak on journalism and activism. Well, I'll start with this, that the journalism in Kashmir has gone through different phases. There was a phase in Kashmir before 1990s when most of these spaces where you tell the stories were taken up by the people who are not Kashmiri, people like MJ Akbar or others from India or somewhere else, and that was good, of course. But we had little representation of our own in Kashmir, and there were not much books written by Kashmiris. There were not much of the spaces started by Kashmiris. But after the 90s, what happened that when the violence started happening with the late 80s militancy, the people in Kashmir joined fields like journalism and activism and other such fields, and they started telling their own story. But still, we had a little representation at the global level where people would discuss Kashmir. So the first, we can say the shell was broken by Basharat Peer when he wrote the book Curfew Night, which is a brilliant book. And then, since then, we had several books. Mirza Waheed wrote a brilliant book, The Collaborator. Then we had Until My Freedom Has Come. Then Siddharth Gigu wrote a book, The Garden of Solitude. Now Natasha's book is out, and my book also is part of that. And so this whole process has been going on for years and for decades, and I'm the product of that process. And I'm from the generation which hasn't seen Kashmir when there was no military or when there was not such repression as it is right now. Because I'm born, there's a generation in Kashmir which is changing the things in Kashmir right now, as a lot of speakers mentioned about self-representation and Facebook spaces and other such spaces like websites and other things. And this is the generation which is taking up these spaces and trying to tell their own story in a different way. And most of this generation is taking part in journalism, in fields like art, literature, in painting, and in cartoons, like Ananya mentioned a lot of it. But in Kashmir, it's not easy to be a journalist in a place like Kashmir where things are not black and white. It's always gray. You don't have one truth in Kashmir. We have a saying within our friends which we say mostly, that in Kashmir the biggest tragedy is truth, because you don't know what is that one truth, because there is no such truth which you have to say. And mostly we get told by people from India or from outside India that, oh, it's easy for people in Kashmir to become journalists and to choose these big fields and to get scholarships and to be at these platforms to speak. But I must tell you, it's not that easy, because it comes with a price which you pay through your whole life, the way you live in that situation. Because as I guess Mirza said, that in Kashmir, there's nothing you can stay away from politics. When you're born and when you get into your senses, you know everything is politics. Even if you go to a bread maker or you go to a shop, whatever you are discussing is politics. There's no such place, I think, in a day where someone or the other will not mention Sheikh Abdullah, because it's the part and parcel of the society. Everyone says, either someone will say good about Sheikh Abdullah or someone will say bad about Sheikh Abdullah, that he did a big mistake. But I'm just saying that it's a process. Like with my life, the first thing I remember about Kashmir conflict is 1996 elections, like how forces came into our houses and then forced people to vote. And it was not that I wanted to be a journalist since day one. It was not like that. But then when you see the whole process, that how things are happening around you, that how you're being reported, that how Praveen Swami writes in The Hindu about you, how he says that Sopore had a good elections when there was like just a few dozen of people who voted. So you have to go and choose this space and choose these fields and take up these platforms and speak for yourself. So you don't, I believe in speaking for myself. I don't think that I need someone else to speak for myself. Of course, there should be debate between the people and exchange of ideas all over the world, but then we should have a say in whatever is happening. So I quoted Praveen Swami because last month he did a story in The Hindu where he mostly writes, and he quotes, most of the times he has these brilliant sources from intelligence on which he crafts the stories. And in his story, he concluded that the people of Sopore, mostly the young, are drug addicts, and the separatists pay them around 100 rupee to throw stones. And that's how the election boycott was possible in Sopore. But he never said who was the person who is taking the drugs, and who are these people, how did he get to know. And this is like the big newspaper in India which is reporting about Kashmir and trying to portray that the boycott in Kashmir was nothing. It was just some of the, which they say, as I quote, misguided people who were forcing the boycott on people. Like if I ask people here that how many of you know that what was the intensity of the election boycott in Kashmir, I'm sure most of the people won't know because the media never reported it in that way. It should have been. Otherwise, it was in 2 districts, it was less than 30% voting. In Baramulla, it was around 40 or something. But this is why journalism by people of Kashmir is so important, and this has been inspiration for me also. Like people like Basharat and Mirza, and when they started doing these things, then we thought, oh, we should do the same thing. And now this same space is changing into a different direction. Because as you know, since 2008, the things started changing in Kashmir. Till 2008, it was mostly about the gun. It was mostly about the people had picked guns in late 80s, and there was a movement, armored movement. But in 2008, these young people started throwing stones. They started writing on social media. They started making videos, and they started this debate and conversation with the world outside Kashmir. And after 2008, 2009, and 2010, the mass protests happened again, and this whole narrative of new resistance, which we call in Kashmir, got established. And we call the another narrative which got established in Kashmir was art revolution, because the young people started taking these new spaces and mostly the creative fields to tell the same thing which the people with the guns were telling, but this was a more peaceful and a more creative way. But what happened with that is, this is the most contemporary situation I'm talking about right now, that this didn't go well with the state, of course. So in last 5 years, there have been several number of youth who have been using Facebook, and they have been arrested. There are examples like Faraz Yassin, Waqar Muhammad, and Waqar Moharkant, and other people who have been in jail for months for just posting something on Facebook. And in this year also, there have been some arrests because of using Facebook and Twitter. And then the other thing which happened in Kashmir lately was this alternative media which started coming up, because in Kashmir we have a large media organizations. We have around it's in hundreds there are newspapers registered in Kashmir. But there's another thing happening in Kashmir is that the armored movement, when it started, so how did the Indian state respond to the armored movement? They created the counterinsurgents, they created Ikhwan, they divided people within Kashmir. And with this new resistance, the same thing is happening now, and it has been happening for a few years now, that they are creating their own versions of new resistance. If there is a singer singing a resistance song, there's another singer who is singing something else. If there are websites, there are blogs, there are magazines, alternative magazines on Kashmir, which are talking about the human rights violations and the resistance. On the same level, parlor, there are other versions of the same thing. So what they are doing, they're diluting the discourse which this certain group is trying to develop in the world. And with the newspapers, I won't go much detail into that. We spoke that last time at Warwick, that how newspapers function in Kashmir. Everybody knows that the media has their pulls and pressures, we know that, but still they try to find a way and they try to work. But as in India, mostly people in Kashmir, they don't look up to the Indian media because they have seen how the Indian media has been covering Kashmir. So in Indian media is getting more and more towards corporatization. As you know, recently Reliance took over one of the major media organizations, Network 18. They took the management control. I'll quote one example, which I did last time also, that there was this one Kashmiri student in Delhi. His name was Imran Kirmani, and he was doing a pilot training in Delhi. And after he finished pilot training, he got a job in one of the airlines, private airlines in Delhi. And he had just few days to join the company, and there were 5-6 civilian people who came to his house, to his flat, and they told him that you have to come with me, you have to come with us, you have to assist us in some investigation. So he said, but what is this about? I don't know anything. They said, it's okay, you should not call your home, it's okay, we'll let you go in few hours. And he went with them, and then they kept him for 3 days. And so the people who came to his house were from the Lodi Road police station in Delhi, which is one of the notorious police stations in Delhi, which is accused of several fake encounters in Delhi and fake arrests. So they arrested him. For 3 days he was in that police station, and he didn't know what was happening with him. They were telling him that it's all okay, it's all fine, you don't need to worry. And then this is what he is telling me after he came back to Kashmir, and just 2 years ago, at his home in Handwara, which is one of the northern districts in Kashmir. So he says that then after 3 days, they told me that you should take a shower and you should come with us, we are going somewhere. And then I said, okay. So I went and I changed, and they came with me, and suddenly they opened a door, and what I saw was all the cameramen and the reporters there clicking pictures. And there were policemen with me, and they told the media that this is the guy we have arrested, he's an LET militant, and he was planning a 9/11 type attacks on Diwali in Delhi. So then he was arrested. So for 5 years he was in jail, and five years his trial was going on and on in court. And then after 5 years, the court says that there is nothing against him, is not involved in anything, there is no evidence against him, and after 5 years he gets acquitted by the court. And the point here is that when I went to his home after 5 years, after he was released and he was at home, so I talked to him. So I myself, as a journalist, like journalists are told doubt everything. Whenever you go to report, you should doubt every version and you should recheck it. So I thought maybe he's getting too much emotional or something. I should check what happened 5 years ago. So I went back to the stories 5 years ago when he was arrested, and that's exactly what I found, what he told me. So I found all the major newspapers and news magazines and the news channels of India reporting him as a LET terrorist, without any trial, he was not prone being a terrorist, but they were reporting LET terrorist held in Kashmir, we recovered this much of money, this much of ammunition, which was all false. And then he told me at his home that I will never, and he never talked to any Indian media after that. And after that, he never went to India, because that's what changed him. And then he was asking questions like, what should I do with my life now? My 5 years are ruined, and this is how media played with my life. This is how they reported me. And this is just one incident I am mentioning. There are several such incidents which has happened. That there is this thing in India which is called media trial. You will see that the person is getting arrested, and you will see in the media they give judgments like, oh, he's a terrorist, he's this and he's that. So this whole thing which media creates is the perception among the people in India. I myself don't blame the people of India for a lot of things, because they have to question, but there is a lot happening because of the media, because the media is telling them this is how they behave. Like in Delhi, some people ask me, oh, is everybody in Kashmir carrying a gun? They think it's like Afghanistan. They think they have this notion in mind that this is how it is. That's how the media creates it. And in India, I think the majority of the people watch Doordarshan. And if you will go and watch Doordarshan, you will see what kind of programs they have. They have like a Pakistan reporter, Kashmir this. These are the kind of everything that they do is propaganda. So all the things come together and then form this narrative in us that we should do something on our own. And that's how these new books are coming up. There is a new book coming this year by Shahnaz Bashir. the half mother. There are a lot of writers right now in Kashmir. There are a lot of new people who want to become journalists, and there are a lot of people who are writing, who are producing every kind of art they can do to keep this movement alive, to keep this self-representation and storytelling alive in this new form. Thank you.